Hi, hello, and welcome to the Training Portal podcast. This is a bonus episode. I'm your host, Melissa Mossad, and this is where we dive into insightful conversations with industry leaders, innovators, and change makers, shaping the world of business, leadership, and education. Today, I have the absolute privilege of speaking with a true icon in South African business landscape, Pretorius. A name synonymous with leadership excellence, Brand is best known for his remarkable tenure as the CEO of McCarthy Limited, where he played a pivotal role in the company's turnaround and success. Prior to that, he held key leadership positions at Toyota South Africa, cementing his legacy as one of the most respected figures in the automotive industry. Beyond his corporate achievements, Brandt is a thought leader in leadership and personal development. His book, In the Driving Seat, Lessons in Leadership, is a must-read for anyone looking to understand the power of servant leadership and the role of adaptability in businesses. His leadership philosophy emphasizes relationships, ethical decision-making, and purpose-driven management, has inspired countless individuals and organizations. Today, we'll be discussing his journey, the lessons he's learned, and his view on the evolving world of leadership, technology, and automotive industry. We'll also explore his thoughts on staying relevant in a rapidly changing environment and how businesses can navigate uncertainty with confidence. So without further ado, let's welcome Brand Pretorius to the Training Portal podcast. Brand, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me today and have this conversation. It's truly a privilege to be speaking to you.
Well, I'm very honored, Melissa, by your invitation, and I'll do my best for you.
I'm sure you will. But so I'm very interested. Can you share more about your insights into the upbringing and your educational background and that whole path that led you towards leadership roles within Toyota South Africa and McCarthy?
It's a long story, but I will give you the abbreviated version. So, from a very early age, I was a car enthusiast.
Mm-hmm.
So, at the age of 11, I compiled a scrapbook, and the book was filled with photographs of the cars I admired, the cars that were designed beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
So to cut a long story short, when I was in the equivalent of grade 11, I spoke to my parents, I spoke to my teachers, and they knew about my passion for cars, and they recommended that I should go and study mechanical engineering.
Okay.
Well, off I went by train from the thriving metropolis of Kroonstad to Pretoria. And I enrolled as a first-year student in mechanical engineering. I was fortunate I had an ISCOR bursary, but I didn't like it. In fact, I hated it, and therefore I didn't do all that well. That's a bit of an understatement. But I passed my first year, and then during the December holidays, I said to my mother, I don't want to go back.
Please don't let me go back.
So what do you want to study? And I took the University of the Free State's yearbook, and I started paging through it. And I got to the pages about BCom marketing. And I went to the University of the Free State. I worked part-time to repay my bursary. And I had a wonderful professor in marketing. Then I did my honors degree and my master's degree part-time. And my master's degree I did on the motor industry, my thesis. And it was a deliberate move from my part because I wanted to use my thesis to get into the motor industry.
Okay.
So when the thesis was completed, I sent extracts to Ford South Africa, to Volkswagen SA, and to Toyota SA. But I hoped that somebody at Toyota would read it and offer me a job, because I admired Dr. Albert Wessels, the founder of Toyota. And it was part of my destiny because 3 weeks later, I had a job offer from Toyota.
I got the job! I got the job! Woohoo!
Wow.
I said to Tilly, we are on our way to Johannesburg. And I started at Toyota as the manager of the business management department. But I had nobody to manage because I was on my own.
Oh no.
And so I had to convince all the Toyota dealers to use the Toyota standard accounting system, which frankly I didn't enjoy. But then I realized that Toyota didn't have a market research department.
Oh.
And I developed a proposal, went to see the MD at the time, Colin Adcock, said to him that I believe a market research department would add a lot of value. And typical of Colin, he said, go and compile a budget and then bring it back to me, which I did. And he signed it off. I didn't have an office. I sat in the corridor with an old desk. And that was the foundation of my career in the motor industry. So I spent 22 years with Toyota SA, had a fantastic time, experienced success. We grew Toyota's market share from 11% to 30%.
Wow.
Improved its customer satisfaction rating from 7th to number 1. And
That is huge.
Then in 1995, I received an offer from the McCarthy Group. It was the largest motor retail group in the country. It had 32 different franchises, 140 branches, and I decided that I wanted to learn more about the retail side of the motor industry. So with a heavy heart, I left Toyota and joined McCarthy. So McCarthy at that time was a diversified retailer. You could buy from the McCarthy Group from a pair of underpants to a Rolls Royce because I was in charge of the McCarthy Motor Holdings. It had another division that sold furniture, clothing, building material on credit into the lower end of the market. That division was called Prefco. Things went horribly wrong. They extended credit to every person who could provide a thumbprint.
Yeah.
And on the 1st of February 2001, the McCarthy Group, it was a listed company. It had 20,000 employees. It was declared insolvent because of all the bad debt write-offs. The board then asked me to take over as chief executive of the group. I thought about it, I prayed about it, I spoke to my family, and then I said yes, because my people at McCarthy Motor Holdings would have been innocent victims of McCarthy's bankruptcy. It was an incredible experience. Our share price plummeted from 21 Rand to 18 cents. I learned about my faith. I learned about the power of the human spirit. I learned about business. I learned about leadership. And through the grace of God, over a 3-year period, we managed to turn McCarthy around.
Wow.
In 2004, the McCarthy Group was sold to the Bidvest Group. I became an executive director of Bidvest, learned a lot, and retired in 2011. So 38 years in the motor industry, and I can't thank God enough for His grace, for what I could learn, for what I could experience. It was such an incredible journey. I learned a little bit from success, and a lot from failure. So that in a nutshell is my story, Melissa.
That's amazing. And it's quite the journey. And I mean, to think that all that has happened in less than 40 years, that's phenomenal. But now, obviously, Toyota South Africa was not your first job. One of your earliest jobs was at the well-known Kloppers in Bloemfontein, which is a business that many individuals consider a cornerstone of that region. What was your experience working there? And in your view, what contributed to Kloppers' success over the long term?
I feared my boss. This is very confidential, but he intimidated me. No, on a more serious note, I did learn a lot. Willem Klopper, who founded the business, or Uncle Willem, as I called him, he believed in the vertical integration model. So what it meant in practice is I went into Kloppers at 6 o'clock in the morning. I unpacked, I marked all the stock, put on the little price labels, and whatever I sold and what the customers couldn't take home themselves, I delivered in the evening in a Datsun bakkie. And I had Sam, who helped me struggle up staircases carrying fridges.
Pivot! 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 Pivot!
And stoves. So working behind a counter was an enriching experience. Wonderful customers and very difficult ones. What did I learn? I learned about hard work, the acceptance of responsibility, and I learned that results were of paramount importance. So Willem told me one day that he's going to transfer me to what he called the Kloppers mini branch. So it was located in the Bloemfontein CBD. I was the only employee. Every afternoon at exactly 5 o'clock, Willem phoned and said, hoeveel geld het jy gevat? What was your turnover? And then some days with a thin voice, I would say, 18 rand. And then when Willem would say, it's not good enough, I then broadened my scope and I became Bloemfontein's #1 pantyhose salesman. Yeah. And so I learned a lot. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that the Klopper family gave me.
That is, and I mean, I can just imagine how that helped almost create a bit of a foundation for you towards, your work in Toyota and McCarthy. I mean, Kloppers is really it has been such a big contributor in that region. I love hearing like the stories of how it was in the beginning almost. So, Mr. Pretorius, in your book, In the Driving Seat, you advocated quite heavily for servant leadership, which is honestly a concept that contrasts with, our traditional image of corporate leaders these days. How did you develop this sort of leadership philosophy, and why do you think it is so effective?
I believe that people respond much better to love than to fear. I believe that before you can ask for a hand, you need to touch a heart. I believe that should you care about your people and serve them, you take your relationship with them to a different level, and they become more honest, more dedicated, more committed. I learned about servant leadership from my mother.
Oh.
My mother never had a job. My dad was 10 years older than my mother, and he was a teacher and she sat in his class. They were blessed. They had 4 boys. My father was the undisputed head of the household. He was a highly intelligent man, high integrity, very strict, very autocratic. We respected him as the head of the household, but my mother was the heart of the household. She raised 4 boys without ever raising her voice.
Oh.
She earned our respect, our trust, our admiration, and our love. And she had infinitely more influence than my dad had. So she earned influence, she didn't demand it. When I became a leader of people, I adopted the same philosophy. Example is everything. I led by example, and the impact was amazing because I didn't use any authority. If a leader has to use authority to get people to follow him or her, such a person is not a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen over the years bosses who are tyrants, who shout, who intimidate, who belittle. The only thing they get out of their people is reluctant compliance, no commitment. Their people just do enough to stay out of trouble. They don't release any discretionary energy. They don't volunteer their intelligence and their contribution and their commitment. So servant leadership unleashes energy, initiative, pride, commitment. So I was, from the day I started at Toyota, I was never a boss. I don't think that bosses can get the best out of their people. The sustainability of their success is simply not there. But if you care about your people, if you're prepared to serve them, then people will perform miracles. The most important and significant role model of servant leadership is Jesus Christ. If you look at all the leaders over all the centuries, how did it happen that a poor carpenter in his early 30s, over a 3-year period, became the most influential leader that the world has ever known? He was a visionary. He could motivate and lead teams. He was an outstanding communicator, but the essence of his philosophy was humility. He washed the feet of his disciples. He loved his people so much that he died for them on the cross. The most influential leader the world has ever known was the epitome of a servant leader.
We're speaking quite a bit about leaders and leaderships, but I'm quite interested in hearing your opinion. Do you believe leadership is an inherent trait or quality that a person has, or can ineffective leaders learn and evolve into great leaders?
Yeah, my opinion is as follows, that should you be born and with a high level of intelligence, and should you develop charm and good communication skills, and should part of the mix be that you're tall, dark, and handsome, then you will make more rapid progress as a leader because people will put you on a pedestal. And there are pros and there are cons. If you're a natural born leader, then the probability of you becoming arrogant, or the probability that you will believe that you are untouchable, that probability is high. And I've seen the tall, dark, and handsome leaders fail. Not all of them. Leadership is not about personality, it's about principles. leadership is not about charm, it's about character.
Mm-hmm.
So the flip side of the coin is a shy person, but with a high level of intelligence, great self-discipline, a person who has a results orientation, and such a person can, over time, even if he or she is not attractive, not charming, should people trust you and respect you and admire you and love you, then you will be a very effective leader.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen shy men and women, but with an absolute commitment to the right principles and values, and with a high level of competence,
Mm-hmm.
and with a philosophy that leadership is not about me, it's about we.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen those leaders excel. So natural born leaders make more rapid progress, but the risk is greater that their importance, their self-importance is going to go to their heads.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to believe that they are untouchable, and then they may fall off
Mm-hmm.
their pedestals with dramatic consequences. Whereas ordinary people who do their level best and who are honest, high integrity, and competent, they achieve more sustainable success.
Mm.
So leaders are born, but everybody can develop into a capable leader because the fundamentals of leadership do not preclude them from moving into senior positions. So everybody can be a leader.
I like that outlook of it, that everyone can be if they, almost work towards being it. It's not just a matter of you're in a leadership position, you now need to, take on that role. It doesn't work like that. Now, many professionals struggle with maintaining relevance as they grow older. What strategies have you employed to maintain adaptability and confidence in an evolving business landscape?
Somebody said to me the other day, Bront, you have schoolboy curiosity, and I enjoy learning new things.
Mm.
I try and listen, I observe, I ask questions, I read a lot, because otherwise my toolbox is going to become outdated. When I retired, I split my life into learning, teaching, and serving. The learning part is I joined the boards of 6 listed companies, all outside of the motor industry, because I spent 38 years in the motor industry. So I forced myself into experiencing discomfort
Mm-hmm.
at board meetings because I had such limited knowledge. But when I served after a 5 or 6 year term, let's say on the board of ABSA, I now understand how a financial institution works.
Mm.
We live in the knowledge era. Mahatma Gandhi said, live as if today is your last day, but learn as if you're going to live forever. So I want to appeal to people who are going to watch this. Your future market value, the amount of pension you're going to earn, will be determined by your ability to keep pace to the best of your ability with the knowledge explosion.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't keep pace, then you run the risk of becoming obsolete. Information has been democratized. You can Google anything.
Mm-hmm.
All your excuses to say, no, but to go and study, it's cumbersome, it's expensive, it's those excuses have evaporated. So you have to follow a deliberate process of expanding your knowledge base. When I get into bed at night, I do a little survey. I say to myself, Bront, can you sleep easily, convincing yourself that you know a little more tonight than what you knew last night? I do a lot of traveling, and I'm always astounded that at least 95% of people who fly somewhere get into the plane and they sleep. We live in such a fascinating world.
We really do.
There's so much to learn. So being a motorman, if I can quote Henry Ford, although I was a Toyota man, Henry Ford said, knowledge is real wealth that nobody can take away from you.
I love that. And I like that you ask yourself every evening if you have learned more than you did the day before. Because that's something that, I mean, many people won't be able to say they did. Many people say they're just going through the motions of life, and that you become stagnant, your knowledge becomes stagnant, and the world around us is continuously changing. So I think if I take something away from today, I'm definitely going to start doing that, where every day I'm going to ask myself, what did I learn today that I did not know yesterday?
Yeah.
I love that thought. Mr. Pretorius, you retired in 2011, very soon after you published a book on leadership. If you reflect on your transition from corporate life into retirement, what key lessons have you learned, and what advice have you got to offer executives who are approaching retirement age themselves?
Yeah, Melissa, I'm going to make a controversial statement.
Go ahead.
I think the concept of retirement is obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a country where the needs are almost overwhelming. And I think it's almost a sin to work for 38 or 40 years to gather an enormous amount of experience and knowledge and then to go and sit on the stoop.
Mm-hmm.
So my advice is 5 years before you're due to retire, start working on your post-retirement portfolio. Don't leave it to chance.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say, I've worked day and night, so when I retire, I'm going to take 2 to 3 years off. I'm just going to travel the world. I'm afraid if you disengage, if you remove yourself from your network, you're not going to be welcomed back. And then you'll wake up in the morning with nothing to do. You will lose your sense of purpose. The less you do, the stronger the temptation will be to do even less. So for a person to retire and just do nothing, I see what happens to many such people. Mentally and physically, they go backwards at a rapid pace.
Mm-hmm.
The Japanese word is ikigai. Why do you get up in the morning? What is your purpose in life?
Mm-hmm.
Even when you're old, you have to have a sense of purpose, a higher purpose. I spend 50% more or less of my time on serving. So I said to you, I split my life into learning, teaching, and serving.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me energy. It gives me hope. I meet fascinating people who don't just sit back and become helpless and hopeless. They do hope.
Mm-hmm.
They get involved in small things. If it's difficult for them to get involved in major projects that will make a difference,
Mm-hmm.
one has to be proactive, plan, keep your network alive, and do hope. If you do hope, then you get new energy, new perspectives. I founded a literacy program in 1998. It's called Rally to Read.
Okay.
So we go into remote rural areas and we take books to those children. We have people out in the field who monitor the use of the books. They train the teachers because we are sitting on an illiteracy time bomb. Over the last 27 years, Rally to Read has taken books to 750,000
Wow.
learners. It is so fulfilling. It makes such a difference.
Mm.
So don't just retire. Shift into another gear.
Are you familiar with the gear shift?
You mean the Prindle?
Keep on moving forward. Our country needs all of us. Just simple things can make a difference. The other morning on the way to the airport, I saw a big billboard. The background was black. It didn't have a product logo. It contained one sentence in white letters. Kindness changes everything. If we have limited resources, let's just be kind.
That's amazing. I love that. I wish we had more billboards like that, you know, to allow other people to see it so that other people are also inspired by it. So I want to backtrack a bit and speak more about your family. And I know your family has a very strong sporting background, with your brother Henny being an accomplished athlete and your son Yaku playing as centre for the Bulls during their golden era in super sport and super rugby. How has sports influenced your perspective on leadership and teamwork?
Yeah, I believe the same principles that I apply in business can be applied whether you coach rugby or netball or cricket or whatever. If I think back to the time when Yaku was a professional rugby player, and the feedback I got from Yaku as a member of either the Bulls rugby team or the Lions or the Springbok Sevens or the Springbok 15 men team, there are specific things that we do in business and things that successful, for example, rugby coaches do.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is they give their players a unifying vision. They chase a dream. If you take our current coach, Rassie Erasmus, he gave his players a much broader vision.
Mm-hmm.
They don't play to win. They play to serve a nation. They play to instill in the South African nation a sense of unity and pride. So, whether it's a business leader or a rugby coach, there must be an aspirational and an inspirational vision.
Mm.
They have to behave in line with shared values.
Mm.
Shared values like integrity, openness, honesty, caring, serving. And once again, if I take Rassie as an example, the value system, the values within that team behave in line with, those values are entrenched.
Mm-hmm.
Then the third thing, and we do it in business and you do it in sport, you inculcate a winning culture. You set an example when it comes to self-discipline, when it comes to perseverance, when it comes to never, ever giving up. And they apply their philosophy of caring horizontally and vertically. The players care about each other and they serve the nation. And it's incredible what people can achieve when they are motivated. And also when the team is everything and the individual doesn't really count. You've heard what team stands for. Together we achieve more.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it in business, the impact of people pursuing a common vision, behaving in line with shared values, and doing their absolute best. So yes, I learned a lot by observing, for example, some of the Springbok rugby coaches. I had quite a lot of contact with Heineke Meyer
Mm-hmm.
when he coached the Springboks. And the last thing I want to say is a common characteristic is passion.
Oi, go. Oi, more passion, more passion, more passion, more energy, more footwork, more footwork.
Whether you are a medical practitioner
Mm-hmm.
or a farmer or a rugby coach or the CEO of a company, passion provides energy. Optimism doubles energy. If you can instill in your team common objectives, if you can get all the members of the team to behave in line with the right principles and values,
Mm-hmm.
then victory is inevitable.
Now, before I close off and before we say goodbye, I have one final question for you. Now, we've mentioned quite a few of South Africa's challenges and obstacles that we have noticed. Do you still have hope for the country's future?
Yes, but hope without action means nothing. So I believe that that God has a plan for our country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an optimistic believer. I've learned over the years, I've experienced over the years that we have wonderful people, black people, white people, colored people, salt of the earth people,
Mm-hmm.
who aspire to also lead a decent life. Yes, we've got people on the fringes who are extremists, but I would say 90% of South Africans have common needs.
Mm-hmm.
They want a reasonable standard of living. They want to care for their families. They want to achieve. They want to attain fulfillment. They want to be proud. They want dignity.
Mm.
So what is the key? The key is we need at all levels high integrity, high competence leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has an excuse. We are all leaders. We are leaders of ourselves. We are leaders in our homes. We are leaders in our communities. So what do we need to do? We have to change our mindset. And then there isn't such a word, but I'm going to use it. Some of us have to change our heart set. South Africa has enormous potential, but the way to create peace in our country, the way to dilute antagonism and in extreme cases hatred, we must demonstrate our kindness, we must demonstrate our commitment to a better future, we must get involved, we should keep hope alive, and at the practical level, we need to help our government so that they can get the economy moving.
Mm-hmm.
The likelihood of a country that will be at peace is very low if we consider that the economy is growing 1.5% per annum. Our unemployment is the highest in the world. 50% of South Africans go to bed hungry. 50%.
It's horrifying.
So if you take the Chinese analogy, their economic reform policy was implemented in 1978. Yes, they don't have a democratic government, but they've created over 400 million jobs
Wow.
since 1978. If we look at other analogies like Singapore, it can be done. So we must exercise our democratic rights. This government of national unity has the potential to put us on a new path. We must have faith. But I say again, to sit on the sideline, to criticize, to be cynical, to have toxic conversations, to indulge in downward spiral speaking, it just makes matters worse. Let's keep hope alive. Hope sees the invisible. Hope feels the intangible. And hope achieves the impossible. Sorry about the emotion.
Not at all.
I've got 7 grandchildren, all in South Africa. I want them to have a good life here. And I believe very strongly that it is possible.
It is. Mr. Pretorius, I want to thank you so much for sitting in and chatting with me today. I learned a lot more about leadership than I could from reading any book, because your story is just so inspiring. The fact that you managed to take some time out of your day to sit with me and chat about your insights, it means so much. And I'm sure there are some viewers out there who are going to appreciate it just as much as I do.
Melissa, I want to thank you for the manner in which you conducted this discussion.
Thank you.
And I want to say to you that it's been an honor for me. And I also want to say that I don't have all the answers. If I created such an impression, I want to apologize. But I experienced success, learned a little bit from it. The Japanese word is skoshi. And I also went through deep and dark valleys, and I learned a lot from that experience. But I think in the final analysis, we must remain hopeful, and we must do whatever we can every day to create a better future. It is the one thing about South Africa that nobody can dispute. We needn't wait a second to make our country better. I said it just now, the needs are everywhere. And that's where one finds fulfillment. Fulfillment is the ultimate human purpose. And in South Africa, with all its challenges, the one benefit is, if we do our best, if we care, if we make things better, then we will enjoy fulfillment.
I think that is a lovely sentiment to end the discussion with. But thank you so much again.
It's been a pleasure and a privilege for me.
Thank you.
Next time on the Training Portal podcast.
In South African history, it was uncertain times. It was times of transformation. It was necessary. I was part of it. I'm proud of, where we are now as to where we were. I remember we had people who came to teach us how to sing the Nkosi Sikelele phonetically. We would go into the team room and somebody would help us, and then we'd ask them as a joke, like the guys who really couldn't sing it at all. We'd ask them to stand up in front of the team and sing the national anthem, and they were nowhere. So we would sing in Nkosi Sikelel in front of 60,000 people and be like,
and unsure of the words.
And then all of a sudden, die Bloemfontein. It's like crazy, you know. So like, if you played in Pretoria, there was hardly, it was silence for the first bit of that, and then like 60,000 people singing. And now I go to the stadiums, and it's so beautiful to hear. We have such a beautiful anthem. It's so incredible to hear 60,000 people sing from the first to the last word.